So, Beyond the Reverie. These are but minute fragments of memories drifting in an endless ocean. Memories of what will be in the near future. Could it be shadows of the tangled thread woven by Elysium? Or perhaps faded illusions that slip through the cracks of time and space? There are none who know the answer. Und ja, das sind auch kleine Teaser about what's to come. Another Hot Spring Paradise. January, the year 1208 of the Septian Kalender. Also, vom jetzigen Zeitpunkt, wir müssten im Ende März im Jahre 12.207. Das heißt 10 Monate in der Zukunft. Ungefähr. Between two great mountains at the tip of a Calvardian basin sits Longley. The town is known for two things, being the eastern entrance to the Republic and exceptional hot springs. Through these enticing factors, does it continue to welcome tourists hailing from both home and abroad. And today it served guests quite unlike its many unseasoned visitors. These had come from another renowned hot spring paradise situated in the northern reaches of Erebonia. The depth of flavor in the food here is just exquisite. Agreed, the Phoenix Wings food is certainly nothing to sneeze at, but if my doubts the chief could replicate these dishes, this unique in taste. The Beachlands Inn's reputation continues to precede itself. Und ja, wir haben einen Schwarzer Familienurlaub. Baron Theo and Lady Lucia Schwarzer were assembling the inn's culinary delights, spirits high and stomachs filling fast. Their daughter Elise sat next to them, her spirit a bit lower by comparison as her brows furrowed with concern. I'm sure his luxuries come with just an equally luxurious price tag, and there's 4 of us, so even 2 nights must have cost a small fortune. Upon realizing what she said, she shook her head. I didn't mean to dampen the mood. I know we have the money, but all my budgeting as student council president has made a terrible habit of me seeing the numbers and everything. The older brother Ian couldn't help but let out a chuckle. Then the budget buster in you like how much we saved, because we are not here as paying customers. We are invited by the owners personally. They said they wanted to get to know us since we run similar establishments, so here we are, and we'll be inviting them to Emu sooner than later, of course. Right, Dad? Absolutely. Added to the list of boons coming from our countries finally coming to terms with one another. The Republic is reveling in unheard of levels of prosperity. The relations between our people are more active and festive than ever. I, for one, welcome any opportunity to further foster friendship. The Baron took another healthy sip of his baijiu before continuing. Friendship over fighting, I say. Such a shame that the world tends to overcomplicate the simple concept. Seeing husband's glass was almost empty, Lucia filled it to the brim while adding her own thoughts. That's all the reason, more reason why we need to make the most of this invitation and enjoy ourselves to the fullest. The trader nodded in agreement. And even that aside, there's no reason to spoil a family vacation when we so rarely have time to take him. Oh, I read about some unusual sweet dishes worth trying here. Would you like to share some with me, Reen? In a bit. I'm thinking of taking another soak in the hot springs, so I might be in the mood for something sweet after. Food here is delicious, but as far as I'm concerned, the hot springs are the real star of the show. That's my boy right there. Touring north of the hot springs paradise would never let a good discussion about them pass him by. He was as fond of their quality and soothing effects as Rean, enthusiasm undeniably apparent from the warmth of his tone to the width of his smile. The medicinal springs happen to be a favorite of mine. I can't help but be fascinated by them time and time again. I can't believe it. I've always known about them, but here's the first place I've been able to feel the way they warm you right to your core. Think we could make one available at the Phoenix Wings? Maybe worth a try, but that comes with its own obstacles. For as many problems as Theo expressed in practical terms, Wien held just as many proposed solutions. The conversation grew more involved by the minute, leaving the ladies of their house to pleasedly bask in their glow and continue enjoying the meal before them. All four felt the same, that it had been too long since they could enjoy each other's company, but their wait had been well worth it. That night, after indulging in his post-dinner soak in the springs and telling his family he was going for a walk, Rean departed the inn. Alright, let's do this. He took in a deep breath, the crisp night air of Longley filling his lungs. The hot springs were an excellent bonus to his trip to be sure, but it was not the real reason he agreed to visit. He had come in search of Jung Kave, the famed sword hermit. Master Kave was the founder of the 8 Leaves from Blade School, of which Rean was a practitioner, and though now over 70 years old, he was still regarded as one of the strongest combatants on the continent. They had not met since before Rean's enrollment at Force. Many a letter was exchanged during the 4 years that followed, but even they had stopped after Rean earned the right to call himself a Divine Blade over a year ago. There was so very much he wished to discuss with his master. What he had learned in his 4 years of training, what had inspired his becoming a Divine Blade, the true meaning behind being the final blade to master the 8 Leaves. There's plenty I would like to ask that have nothing to do with swordsmanship too. All these questions, all impossible to answer without first knowing the whereabouts of a single individual. Even a senior practitioner like Cassius Bright claimed ignorance, having received not a single update from their old master. He had always been an elusive but traceable sword, but wherever he was now, he was next to impossible to track. There was until word of a blade master being sighted in Longley reaching his ears. The man had a fondness for the town's specialties, those being the hot springs and its fragrant tea leaves, making the sighting worthy of particular note. He also knew from letters before they stopped that he intended to journey eastward, making Longley one of the more plausible stopping points. The word came to him just as Schwarzes were invited to stay at the inn during their New Year vacation. Bean's instincts told him the timing was a little too fortunate, but with how vague the lead was, even if it would most likely result in him leaving the same as he had arrived, when he had not discussed the rumors being key to his traveling here, his family seemed to sense it was more than a simple pleasure trip for him. I know Dad would have a great time catching up with him, but I don't want to get his hopes up for nothing. These thoughts in mind, Rean made his way through the night streets. Longley's architecture was distinctly Eastern, making it a uniquely intriguing sight among most Calvard towns and cities. This was not to say it was similar to Crossbill's East Street. With subtle colors paired with dignified beauty, every wall and stone exuded the traditional concept of wabi-sabi. One look was enough to understand the region was rich with history. The quiet charm would give way to contrastly lively evenings. The tourists both westward and further eastward were greeted to stalls dedicated to the hot springs and more. This too had a traditional sort of charm. We asked several merchants if they had any information pertaining to the whereabouts of his master, somewhat sheepishly purchasing a number of souvenirs from their stalls to keep himself from being a nuisance. They justified would make excellent gifts to his friends, his co-workers, and his students. I can't believe it's almost time for them to graduate. I might be more emotional about theirs than I was for mine. For the first time, Rean would get to experience what it was like for the young birds he had taken under his wing for 2 years to finally leave the nest. The first year had been eventful, to say the least. What had started as a problem glass full of disagreements and mounting tension had slowly grown into one of compassion and understanding for one another. It was with each new discovery about themselves and every new ideal the world sought to impose upon them that they grew not only as individuals, but as a team. He hoped this period would remain as much a meaningful part of their lives as it would always be for him. Oh, definitely. The months before the Reproductive Tower's appearance had many a trial, making the 10 months that followed in its shadow pass all too quickly. In that time, Green Student continued to mature, building on everything they had accomplished in their first year to prepare for and settle into their desired futures. Indeed, whether it was by overcoming their demons or by learning to work with them in a healthier fashion, their paths up to now had been well worn, and while they may have had to rest from time to time, he was proud to be a part of why their steps continued to face forward. Proud, but also lonely at the thought of saying goodbye. As the second year drew to a close, lacking in grandiose events, but still rewarding in its own right, it was this mixture of emotions that bore conflict within him most. Can't believe I'll be going through all that over again next year, and even the year after that. Of a career I chose to pursue, huh? He didn't know when he stopped walking. Realizing this, he resumed his search, paying respect to the many generations of educators who came before him. No matter where he looked, he could not find Master Kavi in Longley. It was, however, still too early to say whether the trip had been in vain, as he had at least caught an unverified report of the Blade Master being seen in the mountains to the south. Boarding the terrain at night wasn't going to be ideal, but Reen was already firm on spending the next day with his family. Tonight it would have to be. Making a brief stop to the inn to tuck a souvenir somewhere secure, he then departed for his new destination. The mountains winding, half-beaten trails would be more treacherous at night, but they were not off limits as such. The key, Reen knew, would be to not rely on sight alone. His senses of hearing, smell, or perhaps even touch were going to be equally vital in the hours ahead. Calling upon his experience and intellect to heighten all 5 senses, he took in his surroundings in full. This really takes him back to training in the mountains. To call it experience training would imply his time being one of simple tutelage between student and master, but it equated to so much more. The danger then was far worse than it was now, with some days requiring him to set foot in highly dangerous territories just to find the day's food to survive. It sounds like the Kunlun Mountains may have been used for a similar exercise a long time ago. He was certain to think on the information gained during his search as he continued along the trail. Searching for evidence of human activity in an environment like this was not a difficult task. Humans always leave something indicative of their presence behind that no wild creature could, be it along that fire, footprints, or traces of going to the hunt. One need only follow the light to lead their source. Reen did so, advancing with the caution instilled in him by both his old master and hunting enthusiast of a father. They soon led him precisely to clear evidence that a human had been in the area, though the evidence itself was far more what he expected. Remains of a camp? No, this is... It looked like it had been left by martial artists in training or roaming hunters, but the most peculiar thing was that there was multiple sides, like the first, all window was braced from one to the next. It was as though something was being measured. Maybe this is from a group of scholars doing field research, but it seems too large in scale for that. There was nothing more to be found here, Reen advanced. Soon after, he found another unusual amount of evidence. It's like someone forced their way through here in a car, or more like hacked open a path wide enough for a car to pass through. But for the inspection, he suggested that whoever was responsible had given up on this endeavor, leading him to wonder if they somehow found success elsewhere. And if they did, why had they done this at all? The question pestered him if there was anywhere to clear wide paths. The remote depths of the mountain certainly were not it, instinct told him he was only a step away from discovering the answer. Keep following this trail a little further. At his fort, Reen sensed someone approaching. One person, two people. Yes, there were two, and it was clear they were aware of his presence as well. Only for a fleeting second did he think they might be the ones responsible for the strange trails, but the deadly tension that now thickened the air told him that these were no simple scholars. He felt them draw near, the night wailing themselves well, and then he felt them stop. How about you show yourselves? He spoke without placing his hand on his tachi, signifying to those watching that he had no desire to fight. The spirits then silently emerged from the darkest shadows of the mountains. They looked very much like the shinobi of the east he had heard about, the forms clad from top to bottom in black garments and their faces fully obscured. By the way, richtige Shinobi haben nicht komplett schwarz getragen, sondern eher ein dunkles Blau. I see your inside poses a threat after all, divine blade of the Empire. The contract with our client has yet to begin, but we will make an exception for one among their list of dangerous persons. The spirits then charged. They caught him completely off guard, drawing short, straight blades to attack him as they narrowed in. He was by no surprise, but nearly in the same moment he was in fighting stance, and over his sheath tachi. Fifth form, Morning Moon. He perceived the direction of his foe's attacks to evade them, then mounted a counterattack of his own. All it took was the instant to repel their assault and leave them vulnerable. Ordinarily, this would be the time to take the offensive, but all Reen could do was stare at the two with disbelief. The thought entered my mind as I saw you move, but now that you've crossed blades, paused, the disbelief in his eyes giving way to a more intent gaze. Are you practitioners of the elite school? Another pause, this time from the silhouettes before answering as though they were well aware the question was coming. No, though we do possess ties to the school. We are of the Ikaruga, practitioners of the Black God One-Blade School. The what? Reen was left stunned. The two Ikaruga had their blades horizontally, ready to thrust them forward at any moment. It was as though they wanted to make it clear that while they had been caught off guard once, he would not be so fortunate twice. Reen responded by assuming the middle stance with his tachi, but just as the sides were only a beat away from engaging in battle, what could only be described as a black cyclone roared from the darkness at such speed that it seemed certain to slice anything it touched. His appearance caught Reen by surprise more than the initial attacks by the Spirits. He did not suspect an attack from that angle, the distance, or even that moment. His enemies, on the other hand, did not so much as flinch at his sight. The approaching blade, or an arc and a half in length, was heading directly for Reen's back. Couldn't plausibly dodge it now. Perhaps he should have noticed. Perhaps it was impossible to notice. Although the answer, Divine Blade of the Empire, would soon fall. The spirits waited in for his final moments to be convinced of no other fate in his future. When Reen spun his body in a full circle, applying the intensity built into his tachi from the motion to a swing, the blade was weighted yet precise, shifting the oncoming blade to a new direction without mitigating its near overpowering force. This technique was an application of the first form, Helix. There was no greater course in the moment than to use it to redirect the attack without it ever making direct contact. The spinning blade was now significantly off its intended course, but Reen slashed at it again, birthing a shockwave that further shifted its path. The blade went flying here's to the right of the direction it had come from, and was there to deftly catch it midair. We have only recently taken the title, but you are worth of being called a Divine Blade. All the same, you used the unclouded eye well. From this hand emerged a new figure from the darkness. First clad in similar garments to the silhouettes, something about his presence was much more inspired by comparison. His musculature was thoroughly discerned beneath his body-covering fortified suit. His every movement, however slight, reflected a complete lack of hesitation, and the faint light of his eyes, visible through his mask, projected no emotion whatsoever. The man possessed the aura of a true warrior, one projected only by those who have fought more battles than was possible to count. Fall back, he is too formidable for you to handle. Silhouette slid into the darkness in an instant. Only the new arrival was left to face Reen. I need to know, who are you and why did you attack me? Our contract forbids the disclosure of such information. You leave this place now, fledgling Divine Blade. The tone was not one of advice, nor one of an order. It was as if the man were stating a fact. His calmness, wailing, an undertone of malice that told Reen what would happen if he did not do as he was told. I'm afraid I can't do that without an explanation, not when I haven't found what I'm looking for yet. Understand then? There was no longer anything to discuss. All I could do was battle. I, Kurugane of the Rogetsu school, shall be your opponent. Kurugane stood at attention. The large blade he had thrown before now pointed. I'd have rather settled this with words, but I can see that's not an option. He decided, taking his own stance in turn. Eine Nase kribbelt. Yeah. Then Reen Schwarzer, master of the 8 leaves from Blade School 7th form, shall be yours. The Divine Blade moved instantly. The bizarre weapon Kurugane wielded was less akin to a sword and more 4 equally sized blades arranged in the shape of a cross, their bases connecting to a single point. That he could direct this large, weighted shuriken as though it were a simple child's toy spoke volumes about how strong he was. Still, even it was not infallible, for it was not one to be idly used in close-range combat. By the way, eine ähnliche Waffe zu das, was Kittiger Rowan used, also nutzt. Kurugane appeared to have no other key weapons on hand either, meaning that if Reen could force him to fight where he would be at the most disadvantageous, would very likely come out of this as the victor. This was what he had in mind when choosing to act first. Second form, Gale. He closed a gap between them, threw his blade, and made this wide swing toward his opponent in the blink of an eye. Kurugane blocked the blow with ease. That, however, meant nothing in the larger scheme of things. We knew well this man's capabilities, so long as the gap between them was closed, and it was, he considered the attack a success. But just as he thought he would be able to push onward and overpower his foe by mounting a newly fierce assault, Kurugane split his cross-shaped shuriken in half. The ease at which he did made it clear this was intended by design. He can do a real double sabers. There was no hiding his shock. In the West, double sabers were seen as relics from the Dark Ages that were difficult to utilize. Crow was the only person Reen knew who was competent with one, and only one. The skill it would take to use two was almost too difficult to fathom. His surprise created an opening that Kurugane was not going to let pass unexploited. Possessing twin two-ended blades allowed the shinobi to perform considerably more strikes than Reen, giving him no chance to push back. Steel sparked as their weapons clashed. Kurugane was dominant for some time, but he could do nothing to bolster his advantage. With strike and spark after strike and spark, the advantage was moving back to Reen. This was in part due to him being used to fighting this weapon that defied rationale, but it was also because he had been given the time to find what he was looking for, the perfect range in which to attack. Double sabers were forged with a shorter reach than they appeared to have, something inevitable due to their handle being in the middle. It could have been because he also used them as shuriken, but the length of Kurugane's sabers were even shorter than Gross, meaning Kurien would have to adjust with the longer length of his blade. He measured patiently, staying only just out of Kurugane's reach and evading the onslaught by a hair's breadth each time prior to countering. It was calculated quickly thanks to Kurugane's frequent rapid attacks, meaning all Rin had to do now was to wait for the right moment. This moment would come in the form of his opponent showing impatience for this stalled battle, driving him to take an unneeded step forward. Rin evaded the strike expertly, instead returning it with an upward diagonal slash. The forceful swing of his tachi made contact with the handle of Kurugane's own swung weapon, knocking it clean out of his hand. The forceful swing of his tachi made contact with the hand of Kurugane's. Das hab ich schon gelesen. We dashed forward to make use of this await opportunity, but after only a flicker of bewilderment, Kurugane moved to deny him. He blocked Rin's attack with the double saber still in his possession, then hurled a hidden kunai with his free hand, jumping backward a significant distance while doing so. Very good, divine blade of the Atlas. You may pay it to the skills of our princess, but you without a doubt deserve your reputation. Princess? Rin's intonation went unanswered as Kurugane took a notable different stance than before. Oh. Ich glaube, ich habe eine Idee, wen er mit Princess meint. Ich habe schon ein paar Charaktere vom Design her und so gesehen, die später kommen werden. Ich kenne zwar nicht den Kontext, wie und wo sie irgendwie dazugehören, aber von den Designs, die ich gesehen habe und von den Namen, die ich schon gelesen habe, ich habe schon ein paar Ideen. I should demonstrate my respect for your skill with my finest technique. That's what Rin staunch young guard. Since it's heightened, he focused every nerve in his body, fixing his eyes on whatever was to come of Kurugane, who was now gone. Nothing remained where Rin's opponent had just stood. He had taken his eyes off him, never eased himself for a moment, yet Kurugane was nowhere to be seen. How? Had he moved that quickly? Was it some kind of spatial translocation? But there were no signs to indicate either one. Or was it that he never moved at all and was still there, sight unseen? Oh, that wasn't it either. The double saber Rin had repelled to the ground was also gone. He still sensed him, so he hasn't gone far. He suppressed the panic welling up within, holding his senses the second time. That was when another black cyclone thrilled toward him from the shadows. He had expected something of this nature, so with little deviation he was able to deflect it as he did the first time. The attack indicated that Kurugane had reassembled his shuriken after recovering its lost half so he could throw it again. It also indicated, together with the slight changes in his surroundings, where he was now positioned. He needed a little more time to know where he was for certain. But ahead of making a solid conclusion, the cyclone came at him yet again from a new angle. That was fast. He blocked his attack as well as the last before he could fully correct his posture. The next cyclone approached. The gap between was getting shorter and shorter. There was another. The time was shorter, and another shorter. Soon these assorted small cyclones were seemingly growing into a blended grand storm of death, with Rin trapped at its center. This doesn't feel like I'm being attacked by a single person. Did he make phantom copies of himself? He had no idea from where the next cyclone would form, and by the time he located it, the next one was ready. Even the unclouded eye wasn't going to be enough for him to deduce Kurugane's location. He had been able to repel every blade that met with his so far, but that was growing increasingly difficult. I'd want to use it, but I'm not sure I have a choice. Where they're doing so were to place him in danger, Rin took his mind off the battle. He gave up blocking evading attacks, dedicating the bare minimum of his focus to not sustaining lethal blows and focusing his mind inward. He focused on the powers that he had long cultivated inside of him. The power he had feared, loathed, and rejected. The power he now relied on, desired, and nearly surrendered himself to. The power he faced with loved ones at his side, making it a true part of himself. With his mind clear as day, he unleashed his full strength. Enlightened spirit unification. He imbued his Tachi with the great power surging out of him, crying out as he did so, and spinning his body forcibly around to create a bladed circle around him. The energy released by his Tachi repelled all forthcoming shuriken with ease, and with them, Kurogana's phantom copies lurking in the darkness faded to nothing. With that, there you are. He charged toward Kurogane, the man who was thoroughly overwhelmed by Reen's sudden counterattack, throwing him completely off balance. There was nothing he could do to repel what would come next. It's time to settle this. He swung his Tachi downwards while pouring all of his might into a final single strike, but just as the two felt the battle was coming to an end, Zero Form Duality. Accompanied with a voice as beautiful as a bell was a slash tearing through the sky. Its color so black it threatened to eclipse the moon. It effortlessly stopped Reen's weapon from reaching its target, but that wasn't all. What? With a high-pitched metallic sound, Reen's beloved Tachi was sundered cleanly in two. Princess! Kurogane was also taken aback by this new revival. He heard what was happening from both our scouts. You could have invited me to join the fun instead of keeping it all to yourself. The words, as she chided Kurogane, indicated dissatisfaction, but the music of her tone betrayed her excitement. We made to see who this mysterious figure was. Ja, okay, ja. Wenn ich jetzt, wo ich das Design jetzt nochmal up close sehe, ja. I know which character this is. Die werden wir noch in Calvard kennenlernen. Aber wenn ich jetzt schon das sehe, dann bin ich schon mal gespannt auf ihren Character-Arc. Hallo. Ich möchte... Fingerabdrücke sind aber mein Tablet, das ist manchmal recht arsch. So. At the sight of her alone took his breath away. She was young, wearing a fortified suit that looked to be a marriage of classical and modern Eastern styles, with long silver hair that almost appeared to glow in the pale moonlight. Yeah, she was likely close to Reen's, perhaps a little younger, with well-defined features that still had traces of adolescence, appearing strikingly in contrast to the empty void behind her eyes. There was the air of a young noblewoman who had been shattered from impurities all her life, and the stench of a baleful warrior who had bathed in the blood of countless lives. Now, how she was both, and neither at once, Reen could not understand. But it was this very quality that made her all the more captivating and dangerous. In the woman's left hand was a large, black-engraved blade that threatened to freeze him for daring a glance at it. I doubt is what helped Reen's Tachi moments ago. Not would it? Reen fumbled for the words as he clutched the useless handle tightly in his hand. The fair-haired woman only smiled as she looked down upon him. Down upon it. Yeah, it was very fine, but it was never any match for my friend, I'm afraid. She spun the black blade in her hand around gently before holding it up toward the night sky to seemingly display it with pride. It wasn't hard to see why she would boast about possessing such a weapon. He had seen many a blade of historical significance, but the instinct told him that hers was better than any of those. The blind side featured an intricate design of deep grey that, while he could not discern its meaning there and then, he knew was nothing less than a work of art. There was an aura about it, once called as eyes, that seemed to reject its worldly surroundings, making it capable of cutting through anything it so desired. It came in company with a beautiful hilt of deep red that contrasted its body without feeling out of place. This juxtaposition was, in a sense, much a reflection of its wielder, with the two opposing natures being distinctive yet also one. In thought, as he observed, her blade was clearly something special, but it alone did not explain the strength behind her attack. He had never heard of the technique she used, but it was certainly connected to the 8 leaves in some way, and the skill she showed in executing it made it equal to the divine blade. He was so fixated as these thoughts rushed through his mind that he was only brought out by her sudden laughter. I didn't think I'd ever meet you here. I wonder if our old master is behind guiding us to the same place. Or if it's just a happy coincidence. Wait. The manner in which she spoke and her familiarity with Freen gave him a theory. And indeed you just used was really something. Consider me intrigued. It's put you a league above more interesting than our senior practitioners. So he was right. Are you? But before you could hear what he already knew, she turned away, refusing to let him finish the question. He isn't here, so why don't you run on back to your family? Go and make the most of your vacation. Just don't let your skill with a blade slip to where it will need it again one day. She spoke with a certain satisfaction as she pointed down to the other half of his broken blade, and then she leaped high, seemingly disappearing on the other side of the moon. We could only stare, dumbfounded, as she vanished. I couldn't even speak. Kurayana left with her. The Ikaruga, the Black God One Blade School, and our senior practitioners. Yun had been unable to fulfill his objective, and not just that, he was left with countless new questions about the people he encountered and the mountain itself. Felt there was a meaning behind being guided to this specific place, but how important it was, or what it entailed, he did not know. And yet, the person responsible for discerning that won't be me. Looking down on his broken Tachi, he was struck anew with how massive the world truly was, and he realized that, now that his master was confirmed to be elsewhere, the purpose of his visit to Longley was nothing more than to enjoy a wonderful, ordinary vacation with his family. This meeting here was but a peculiar coincidence. For now, at least. When I get back, I will need to reforge my Tachi, and myself. Something stirred in this region, all across Calvard, but there was nothing he could do about it as he was. All he could focus on was training and bettering himself so he could one day play a part against the next threat that loomed over the distant horizon. In resolve, reveling in his soul, he made his way through the now still mountain trail back to where his loving family awaited. And our Spring Paradise, the end. Das ist actually eine sehr interessante Little Story, die ich auch wieder komplett vergessen habe. Ich wusste nur, dass es sie gab, aber ich habe den kompletten Kontext drumherum vergessen. Aber das ist legit einfach ein Build-up dafür, dass halt einfach diese ganze Story um Jun Kafe und sowas einfach noch mehr Relevanz bekommen wird. Und ich bin very intrigued bei dem Charakter. Jetzt schon. Und ich weiß, wie ihr Design aussieht. Und ihr Design halt in voll ist halt auch schon nice.